Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, as this is probably going to be the last episode of the show before Christmas, it's that time of the year again when the shop gets horrendously busy and one is doing 6-day weeks and all that kind of stuff. So before I start, I'd just like to say a big thank you for everyone that's watched the show, everyone that's left comments, emailed in, and supported the show. Obviously, without you guys watching it, then there'd really be no point at all in doing it. So I would just like to say, a really big thank you for watching the show this past year. And well, what am I doing this afternoon? Well, it's a long overdue tasting, I think, from one of my favourite distilleries, beginning with B. So today's episode is brought to you by the letter B. And B is obviously for Bladnoch, and I've tasted quite a number of samples of Bladnoch over the years, and I thought it's about time I shared a few with you. So anyway, before we start, let's do the usual. Give you a bit of a potted history on the distillery. The distillery itself was founded in 1817 in the lowlands of Scotland. Not a particularly big distillery, but it was founded by two brothers, the McClelland brothers, John and Thomas, in 1817. Production sort of, it's gone through sort of phases of, being in production and being closed, probably more so than practically any other distillery I can think of, to be honest with you. I mean, it was run until about sort of 1905. Then it's sort of like there was a period of quiet between that and 1911, when it was then sold, and then it was sold again in 1937, again in 1956, again in 1973 when it was bought by Inverhouse Distillers. Again sold 10 years later to Arthur Bell and Sons, and finally to United Distillers, or when United Distillers bought Bell's and all that kind of stuff. And basically, as you probably know, United Distillers decided in the early 90s, 93 to be precise, to mothball the distillery and practically rip all the guts out of it and all that kind of stuff. So the real history, as far as I'm concerned, kind of starts in 1994, a year later, when Raymond Armstrong bought the distillery. And if you've ever sort of like taken a peek at the Bladnoch blog, you can sort of see some of the trials and tribulations that Raymond went through in the years to get the distillery up and running. So I won't bore you to death with all the minutiae of that, but suffice to say, the stills started running in 2000 and have been pretty much running ever since, apart from the occasional dry period. And basically every time sort of Raymond needs to do a bottling, he'll go and pop into the warehouse to pick a cask, and so practically all the bottlings, even though they might not sort of have a cask designation, are pretty much always sort of single cask bottlings. As you know, the style of Bladnoch has obviously changed over the years. If you go back to some of the older releases, certainly the United Distillers releases of Bladnoch, certainly in the Flora and Fauna bottlings, it had a very typical, very citrusy, grassy lowland style. And as far as I can see, the style obviously changed when Raymond took over the distillery, and one of the reasons for that was the stills. Both, uniquely enough, both the stills that he uses aren't well. He doesn't use a combination of still and spirit still. And basically, both of the stills are obviously of the same type. They're both wash stills, and I personally think this has given the spirit a heavier, slightly sort of more oilier, with maybe more of the impurities, rather than a sort of a lighter, fresher sort of style that it used to be. that's purely sort of just my opinion of tasting sort of Bladnoch over the years. As you know, Raymond tends to use quite a fair amount of sherry, so you'll often see Bladnoch bottled in sherry. He also does a peated spirit as well, but I thought today we would look at the non-peated American oak aged spirit, because that is, in my opinion, that is the classic, the classic bottling, which hopefully will show the true character of the Bladnoch spirit. So I guess it's basically time to introduce this afternoon's lineup. Right. Okay. So if we're going to start looking at the character of American oak aged Bladnoch, then we kind of have to start with the new make. And fortunate enough, I have a sample of it. This was sent to me back in 2006. It's a December 2006 distillation, and well, wasn't actually bottled, but the alcoholic strength off the still at the time was 71.4%. So quite alcoholic. So hopefully this will, you know, show the kind of bare bones, if you like, of the spirit. Now I'd like to have hopefully had some younger spirit to sort of show, but rummaging in the samples, the youngest I'd got is an 8-year-old, which was bottled at 55%, bottled in, I believe it's now, I can't remember whether this was the 2009 or the 2010 bottling, but either way it was from one of those 2 years. So that's 8-year-old. The next sample I've got here was a 9-year-old, which was bottled in 2012 with a special label and bottled at 55.7, which is unusual because Raymond either tends to bottle at 46 or 55. They seem to be his preferred alcohol levels. And finally, we've got the oldest Bladnoch that Raymond has released so far as I'm aware. Well, he has done a 12-year-old sherry, but this seems to be the current bottling and the oldest American oak aged Bladnoch, which is 11 years old, bottled at 55%, and from cask number 65. You have to forgive me if I don't know the cask numbers of the other ones, but I think you'll find all my notes on of these bottlings on my WordPress blog, so they'll probably have more detail than I can remember. But so there you have it. That's this afternoon's little lineup. So I'll be taking you from sort of straight off the still to 11 years in the cask. So time to start with the new make. Right, okay, so let's have a look at the new make then. Quite pungent, quite cereally, oily, a little bit of high-toned, herbal, sort of vodka-y kind of notes to it. Very, very, very clean. There's a little bit of fusel oil, just a smidge. But it really shows a lovely elegance, quite a nice sort of balance between sort of oiliness and freshness. A little bit of perfumed white flower, a little bit of earth. Yeah, I mean that's it's a good new make. I mean you can't argue with that. Oh. Quite oily, again some cereal, a lot of alcohol obviously, but a nice fresh, slightly grassy finish. So in actual fact it's probably closer in style actually to old-fashioned or old school Bladnoch as the case may be, but obviously a bit short because of the alcohol. So we're going to put a little drop of water with it and see if that kind of opens it out and releases anything. It's got more oilier now, more of that sort of heavy cereal, a little bit of digestive biscuit. Less fresher now, so bringing down the ABV certainly seems to bring out the sort of like the oiliness of the spirit. Again, on the palate, less fresher now, less of that grassiness, but more oils, more cereal, but wonderfully clean, really good. So yeah, I know that if you want to taste new make Bladnoch, I know that Raymond bottles what's called Bladnoch Dew, which is heavily peated new make, which I have tasted and is quite interesting. So you know, if you feel like doing that, you can obviously pick up the new make spirit, but obviously not this one. But nice start. Right, okay, so progressing on a few years now to the 8-year-old, which was where was that? Okay, like I said, bottled at 55%, which I it's kind of my preferred bottling ABV for Bladnoch. I much prefer the 55%. It's kind of a purist thing, I suppose, although I have tasted some lovely bottlings that he's done at 46%. I just kind of prefer the intensity that the higher alcohol content gives the spirit. So let's have a look at this one then, shall we? Quite heavy. It's got quite a bit of oak. That sort of dried fruit, almost sort of grain-like American oak. Very, very oily, with some sort of dense apricot, a little bit of white flowers. There's a lot of oak on this. I'm actually surprised at quite how much oak this is showing. I don't remember it having this much oak character when I first tasted it, but then that was, well, a few years back now. Lovely toastiness to the oak, but it has a freshness. It has not really a sort of a grassiness like you would get from old school Bladnoch, but there was a citrus freshness, a lovely robust oak character, which is, you know, just goes to show that sort of Raymond's picking up some very, very good casks. Palate. Ooh, lovely spicy oak hit that. Again, quite a fair amount of oak, toasty, caramel, with that lovely light butteriness to it, which I've often found on grain whiskies. So this has really picked up the oak quite quickly in 8 years of being in the barrel. Relatively fruity, sort of got a not an exuberant, overt fruit character, but a sort of a weighty density of sort of apricot fruit. Like I said, some nice spice from the oak, and again, the alcohol tends to sort of give it a sort of a crisp, kind of clean feeling, less so than a sort of citrus freshness. So let's put a little drop of water with that and see what happens to the oak when we do that. Oops. As is often the case when you've got something that's relatively heavily oaked. Putting a drop of water with it does tend to sort of knock the oak off a bit, and I'm now getting more of the citrus, some lightly oiled orange. Still the oak is there, giving it a sort of a sweetness, but that sort of perfumed sort of white flower note is now coming through more. It's kind of showing up the youthfulness of the spirit. There's some cereal, some barley, a little bit of malt. Again, it's a robust, big spirit for a lowland. Wonderfully perfumed, and this is absolutely gorgeous. It's a lovely bottling. Excuse me. God, went down the wrong way. Yep, still a fair amount of oak showing on the palate, but the spirit is coming through a bit more of the fleshy kind of apricot fruit, a little bit of cereal, a little short, but it's definitely young, and it's not exuberant, wrong word. It's lovely. It's got a lovely elegance, a lovely depth to it. The citrusness does come through on the finish, and the kind of combination of the citrus and the alcohol does shorten it a little bit. But yeah, that's really enjoyable, really nice. Okay, so let's see what the difference of 1 year in the cask makes, then, shall we? Lovely, rich, toasty vanilla. Possibly a little bit more oak. Bit of dustiness. Yeah, slightly gristy barley. Again, that weight of dense apricot. Lovely, lovely softness. Again, you know, comparisons with an Irish whiskey are very fair, you know, because it has that lovely softness. God, that is a stunning nose. I just love that nose. It's just so balanced. You've got, yeah, a reasonable amount of oak, but you've got the dense fruit. You've got some sugars, a little bit of perfumed flowers. I mean, that is just such an easygoing, very, very drinkable malt. To be honest with you, there's not a huge progression in maturity between the two, so it is appears to be a relatively slow maturing spirit. I mean, in actual fact, Raymond has bottled, what's the oldest? I think he's bottled a 22, and you would sort of think, a lowland going for 20 odd years, and it does. It ages amazingly well and gets really straw-like kind of character. But anyway, I digress. Yeah. Palate. Again, beautifully spicy finish. Lots of black pepper and spices, and not quite so oaked. Again, some cereal, some apricot, some rich fruit, nice vein of citrus running through it. Really nicely balanced. Plenty of alcohol. Again, you've got kind of shortens the length, but gives it that sort of kick as well. and that spiciness, which is really, really nice. So let's put a little drop of water with this one and see what happens then, shall we? Again, it sort of emphasises the oiliness of the spirit, and so it's a little bit less fresh now. There's more white fruit, sort of not quite lychee, but sort of white stone fruit, bit of pear, more herbalness now. Not sort of necessarily grass, but a sort of a latent, almost kind of reedy sort of herbal character. Bit of malt now, a little bit of sort of toffee, but again, you can smell it. It's still quite youthful. There's still that essence of cereal there, and again, it's just an absolute charming nose. That's wonderfully soft, lovely smoothness. Again, that sort of rich kind of apricot fruit, little bit of coffee, mocha, gentle spice, a little bit of almost straw-like notes, not quite. Again, that is just so easy and soft and gentle, but robust as well. It's not an evanescent type of spirit. It has some guts and some real character, and it's why it kind of stands up to sherry really well. I mean, hopefully in another episode of the show, we'll look at some of the sherry cask bottlings that Raymond has done, because a lot of cases, you taste a sort of sherry cask whiskey and you just think, yeah, all I taste is sherry, and you don't get an essence, feeling of the spirit, and you think lowland sherry, oh, it's all going to be swamp. But I've noticed that the sherry casks that Raymond does tend to have more of the sort of like intense perfume, Turkish delighty kind of character, and I don't know whether that's just sort of the way that it matures in sherry cask, but it certainly has some guts to kind of stand up to the sherry and is not completely swamped. I mean, maybe it's because I know what I'm looking for. I don't know. It's one of those things, but to me, it certainly has more than enough character to withstand sherry cask. But coming back to this particular bottling, yeah, really nice. I really enjoy it. And finally, this year's bottling, the 11-year-old cask 65, again bottled at 55%. Let's see what a couple more years has done to the spirit. Whoa, some big oak there. Hugely vanilla, toffee, a little bit of banana, a little bit of coconut maybe. Again, very grain whiskey like, but obviously without the sort of the graininess that you get with a grain whiskey. But big oak, really silky. It's obviously showing that progression. 11 years now, and it's really. I mean, it picked up the oak pretty quick in the 8-year-old, and it's now really getting to grips with the oak. It's and the purity and the cleanliness is absolutely superb, and it's again hats off to Raymond for getting some very good American oak casks. Oh, that's big. That's a big nose. I mean, you can argue that you're maybe not getting a huge amount of distillery character, but there's some weighty fruit underneath all of that, and there's the perfume note and some not quite straw-like notes again, but we're kind of getting there. It's not grassy, it's not sort of full-blown sort of reedy kind of straw, but it's kind of moving there. A little bit of Turkish delight, that sort of rose oil kind of note. Still a little bit of gristy cereal. I mean, if you just sort of gently inhale, you kind of get that. If you sort of take a fairly big sniff, you get a lot more of the oak. But if you sort of like gently sniff at it, you certainly get more of the sort of perfume, like almost violety notes, white fruits. So on initially you go, whoa, Oak City, but you take a while with this and you sort of like gently sniff at it, and you realise that there's an awful lot more to this particular whiskey than just the oak. And gosh, I love them. As you know, I like my bourbon oak malts. I like palate. Got quite a bit of tannin, not a huge amount of spice, more of the slight caramel oak notes, a little bit of coconut, a little bit of coffee, some white chocolate. Again, underneath you can sort of sense some fleshy fruit, some cereal, some oils. Again, nicely balanced, I think. I mean, yes, all right, it's a little bit heavy on the oak, as was the nose, but really enjoyable, lovely. Let's put a little drop of water with it. Again, oilier, like we've seen in the previous couple of bottlings. That oak is still hanging on in there. I mean, there's no getting rid of that, it has to be said, but more coconutty, white chocolate. The spirit is a little bit fresher. There's a little less of the sort of heavily oiled apricot, a little bit more grassiness, a bit more emphasis on the white fruits, on the sort of slightly perfumed flower notes. But it's just a beautifully elegant and still fairly robust, even though it is a little bit lighter in character. Oh my, that is silky. It's a lovely crystallised orange on the finish. Again, still quite a fair degree of oak, but it's not so overt. There's more of the fruit. Some lovely toasty notes, nutty toasty notes on the aftertaste. Still fairly broad, dense. Some nice barley character, less of the cereal. As you probably noticed, as it's got older, obviously the cereal notes are starting to sort of dissipate. They're obviously being removed by the oak. And it's really rounded, little, like I said, nice sort of nutty, toasty note on the finish. Yeah, that's lovely. Really like that. Right, okay, so let's sum this little tasting up. So, Bladnoch, lovely stuff. Go buy yourself a bottle if you like. If you like your Irish whiskies, I mean, this to me is the quintessential lowland whiskey. I mean, you know, some people may argue and say it's Auchentoshan. The 12-year-old Auchentoshan leaves me a little bit cold, it has to be said. And yeah, okay, you can argue that, you know, lowland whiskies were more traditionally triple distilled, yada yada yada. But you know, coming back to what we've got, Raymond is producing, you know, some stunning bottlings. It has to be said. Obviously, tasting the new make, you get the genesis of the character of new Bladnoch, which is slightly oilier, slightly richer, denser, maybe, and obviously taking up a lot of oak. And maybe in the past, the use of oak was more, you know, not shagged old casks, but you know, should we say rather well used casks. So I've tasted quite a fair few older Bladnochs that sort of had very little cask interaction. So it just, to me, maybe they were using sort of like you know, more well used casks back in the day, should we say. But obviously Raymond has got some newer casks, and so you're obviously seeing a lot more oak progression as the age statements increase. But again, like I was saying with Sherry Bladnoch, it's got depth, it's got some chunkiness, some character that obviously sort of, you know, stands up to the oak really well. Gentle, smooth, and you know, just really all round great spirit, really enjoyable. And you know, like I said, the current bottling, the 11-year-old, we have in stock, which you can purchase in the shop or obviously through the website www.gauntleys.com. Just get that one in. Yeah, big thank you to Raymond and everyone at Bladnoch for sending the samples. They are just, you know, just really nice. I just sort of like send an email and say, can you just send me some samples of the latest bottlings, and you know, lo and behold, some sort of, you know, some nice sized samples arrived. You know, none of this pathetic little things. You know, get a decent sample, which is always really nice. And like I said, ever since sort of, you know, the distilleries, you know, Raymond started bottling again, I've been a big fan. I really like what he's doing. Hopefully one of these days I'll get to visit, you know, maybe, you know, do a video from the distillery, have a chat with Raymond, who certainly can talk, as I can attest to on a few telephone conversations we've had. Well, there you have it. That's Bladnoch for you. Hopefully that will you know, inspire you to go and find a bottle. You know, if you're not obviously in the UK, you know, see what you can get your hands on. But yeah, okay, so that's about it. So if I don't do another episode of the show before Christmas, I'd just like to wish you, you know, a happy Christmas, good dramming, and hopefully Santa brings you something rather nice to enjoy. Good afternoon.